Hello everybody, absolutely fine that you can join our webinar, but first of all I would like to have and to conduct an interview with Dr. Rima Majed from the American University in Beirut. It's absolutely great that she can join our webinar, and it's also absolutely great that she now can answer the first questions I will raise about the issue of Lebanon, about a very general regional perspective on the new administration, the new US administration, or what we can call an US empire in crisis, and what this includes for millions of people in the Arab world. How do you understand the US role over the last years or so, in particular about, on the one hand, the economic, political crisis in Lebanon, and secondly, in terms of the very, very active protest movement, the very active, as many may call them, revolutionary movement in Lebanon?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, definitely it's clear that the U.S. presidency and the elections this year have a huge impact on the region, I mean, Lebanon and beyond. And in Lebanon, it's more of a complex story, because the effects are directly through the U.S. embassy in Lebanon, and we've seen in the past month the sanctions on some politicians. I mean, it's the choice of which politicians are sanctioned and why they are sanctioned is of course part of this broader imperialist game in the region, but also indirectly because Lebanon is in the middle of this entanglement between regional powers, and therefore what the American or the U.S. presidency policy in the region will be with major powers such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, but also Turkey, will affect Lebanon tremendously, given the political makeup of the Lebanese political parties and their affiliations with regional powers. It's also clear that, I'm talking about Lebanon since I'm here, but also the implications on, two countries where developments should be followed, I think, together is also Iraq. What the U.S. does in Iraq and what it does in Lebanon is usually linked. So yes, I'm not someone who thinks that the Biden administration is going to be similar to the Trump. And there's this general tendency to say it's the U.S. empire and it's all the same. I would say it's the U.S. empire, and it's not going to be drastically different, but it's going to be different. These administrations might be doing things that might impact the lives of people in the region a bit differently. And this is not necessarily to say that one is better than the other. I think both are operating with this logic of the empire and the interest of the empire. So they clearly do not hold the interest of the people of the region necessarily very close to their heart. And we've seen this with the first wave of Arab uprisings in 2011, and we've seen what the U.S. administration has done. And Biden was part of that administration under Obama. So what we can expect today is probably not very different than what we saw back then.
Do you expect that the movement in Lebanon itself has to deal with a new administration that differs significantly from the old one?
Again, as I said, it's more in an indirect way. Of course, there is a U.S. Administration presence in Lebanon more directly, but it's the bigger picture is what is really going to determine, and this is in relation to both Iran and Israel. And you know, Lebanon is a country that has only two borders, one with occupied Palestine and the other with Syria, and both are countries and with a very problematic relationship to Lebanon. So and also depending to whom in Lebanon, but it's a problematic story. So in that sense, yes, I mean, we've seen the U.S. embassy, trying to play a role indirectly, or more directly when they met more recently, when they refused to meet with, after the explosion, and Schenker refused to meet with the politicians in Lebanon and met with some, what he called, representatives of the uprising. It was not clear how these people were chosen, who they represent exactly. So yes, there is a change happening, and yes, we are probably going to deal with maybe a different form of the implications of that imperial power in the region. Again, I'm not saying, I don't think there's a drastic shift. The U.S. Biden administration is not going to revert, I think, decisions that were made under the Trump administration. But I think it's going to be a different style of governing, and of a different kind of relationships, and we'll see how things will unfold. Now, in relation to the streets and the uprising, it's very clear, at least to me, that it would be wrong to read any U.S. administration, and this time in history, as really supportive of drastic changes from below. And again, I refer to the example of 2011, because we have seen how even when there was, at the level of the discourse, a support to change, there's this whole, talks about democracy and democratization. We have seen that on the ground, things were very different. Whether in the very tragic unfolding of the Syrian revolution, that the U.S. administration is partly responsible of what happened, but also if we look at Yemen, if we look at also Iran and what happened there, we look at the Kurds in North Syria. So these are all good lessons, good historical lessons, and of course we have, even before the Arab uprising started, we have the great example of Iraq in 2003, and what the U.S. Interests in the region are, and what the discourse at the political level can be very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me bring in the example you used now to link the different uprisings, today's different uprisings. As we could see already in 2011, there had been a regional uprising, not on organizational level, but at least a time level, at least the same or similar slogans, at least similar directions of protest. For sure, we can observe that as one between today's situation in Iraq as well as in Lebanon. At the same time, there might be some specific conditions and specific reasons when it comes to Lebanon to use a very general slogan of all means all. So what do you expect over the next weeks or months? A new Hariri government waiting for Biden to say, okay, fine, please go on. And the same government, more or less, that used that used its power to exploit a country.
Well, I expect more of the same, unfortunately. Right. I mean, again, I mean, putting the performance aside, and also, I mean, the discourse is important, but looking more closely at what, whether it's the U.S. or Europe, and mainly France, is doing or has done in the past month in the country, it's clear that they are here to salvage the same political class, right? Now, yes, they're making it more difficult, and this is more in relation to the internal contradictions, specifically with regards to Hezbollah. it's. I mean, we can also talk about the other imperial powers such as Russia and its role in the region, right? So there is, these are big clashes that are unraveling in the region through these different developments in Lebanon or elsewhere. And yes, when in Lebanon it was all means all. In Iraq there was a very similar slogan. It was Shala Gala, which also means all of them. And I think this is specific to, because these are the only two countries where it was uprisings that were not against one dictator, but against a system that we call consociation democracy or power sharing. That is supposedly a democracy, but it's really the autocracy of a few. So this was the slogan to say, yeah, we don't have one dictator, but we have these 6 dictators that all need to go, and that we know. And this is why I said, the recent sanctions on politicians in Lebanon are playing on this. Like we sanctioned one of those bad guys, but not the others. So it's again reproducing, it's shifting power dynamics within those systems, but it's really not touching the system, and it's not touching the structures of the system.
So really, thank you so much